Hi, everyone. I'm Sam Osterhout, the executive producer here at Lincoln Square, and it's time again for a peek behind the curtain of white Christian nationalism with Andra Watkins. Andra, how are you?
I'm great. I'm fired up. How are you, Sam?
Yeah, similarly. After that just boring speech on Tuesday night, and
What speech? I didn't. I
I
don't know.
mean,
I didn't
we
watch it.
covered it because we had to, and I'm still tired from the whole
And
affair. I thought
traumatized, I'm sure.
look, I mean, the State of the Union is not the speech, but the actual State of the Union is sick, right? And I think that's a good place to start our conversation today, because we talk a lot about how white Christian nationalists want to come for your birth control, and that's true.
Mhm.
But it turns out that there's also a movement to come after all prescription medications, right? And there's been a link between the MAHA movement and white Christian nationalism that it's not always been sort of coherent to me. Like I don't totally understand a lot of these connections. And you've been writing about this this week, so I want to talk about MAHA.
Okay.
I want to talk about the overlap between the wellness movement and white Christian nationalism, and this sort of concept of body purity,
Mhm.
which seems to be a kind of like cornerstone between the two things. So maybe we start with an influencer. We have Dr. Casey Means, who is being nominated for the position of Surgeon General.
Even though she's not technically a doctor right now, but yeah.
Her medical license has lapsed, and it's been
Mhm.
lapsed for over a year, and she
Mhm.
has no intention of renewing it. She says
Mhm.
she had a surgical residency that she quit before it finished, so she doesn't have that either. She did go to medical school. Um, she's an influencer. She
Mhm.
started a company, and she's a wellness influencer. She wrote a book with her brother. And let's hear. Let's start with birth control. Let's hear what she has to say about birth control.
Okay.
We've got a huge percentage of American women on birth control pills. That's, of course, hopefully post puberty. But we're putting women on exogenous estrogens for acne, for PCOS, for menstrual irregularity, sometimes, of course, for actual birth control. But it's like it's very ubiquitous now in the environment, and it's like when you kind of know this stuff, you're like, how are we allowing this to happen? And then, of course, it's affecting boys too, right? And so I kind of just think about this world we're living in where it's tons of estrogens. It's not like there's a bunch of exogenous testosterones, right? It's not like the plastics are all.
I mean, so I want to start. I want to get your take on this, but I just want to say, she's like, we're giving women medications, this birth control for bad menstrual cycles and this condition and that condition. That sounds great. Like if birth control treats those things, then isn't that a good thing?
Yes. As someone who, as a teenager, suffered horribly with my period every month, I wish I'd had a mother who didn't believe that the birth control pill aborted babies, and would actually let me have gone on the pill to relieve the severe cramping and I mean, the horrible bleeding and side effects that I had every month. But that's not just what she's attacking in talking about this. Estrogen in the environment is making men more feminine, Sam.
Oh, geez.
It's
Are we not going to be able to fight anymore, or like argue,
causing,
or
yeah, I
interrupt
mean,
women? What's going to happen?
it's not just about abortion. I use an estrogen cream to deal with menopause, and she's not for that either. Transgender people, depending upon where they're at, use estrogen creams to manage their gender and to identify as the gender they are. So, this is an attack on all of those therapies for any reason. And that's really what she's saying with all these estrogens in the environment are making men more female. And that's not exactly what she said, but it is really what she said.
That's what she's saying. And so she must have a lot of thoughts about Viagra as well then. Or no?
No. Viagra has a lot of bad side effects, but she never says we need to take Viagra away from men. That's not a problem.
So she's also, and we're picking on her because, she's easy pickings, I guess, but she's put herself out there with these stands, and, she's talk about her take, and therefore the sort of broader MAHA movement's take on all medications, because this isn't really just about estrogen or birth control, right?
So it's very common across white Christian nationalism to question science. We've talked about this before. How can you listen to people who believe we evolved from monkeys and the earth is millions of years old when the Bible says that God created us in God's image about 6,000 to 8,000 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
So there is a complete dismissal of science from that perspective. And I grew up in a household where, my mother would do things. We were watching videos about mushrooms earlier before we came on. My mother got a hold of some Japanese mushroom that you'd steep in water and make this horrible tea. And she'd drink it because it was supposed to make her younger, look younger, feel younger, I don't know what. But if I made the mistake of getting that pitcher out of the refrigerator and drinking from it, I never forgot it for weeks and weeks and weeks because it was so vile. So,
Wow.
She and her sisters stopped wearing deodorant for a while because some influencer of that era said deodorant caused breast cancer. So they were sending around all these different options for what kind of, natural deodorant they could get to use. So, I was subjected to these kinds of things as a child and teenager in my white Christian nationalist household because, those kinds of things weren't coming from a scientist who believed in evolution, who disagreed with the Bible. So therefore, they were more to be believed. I mean, I wrote yesterday because I have chronic eye disease. And my mother actually said that I needed to put colloidal silver in my eye.
Oh my God.
To treat that because she read it somewhere on the internet instead of taking the medications that my doctor recommended. And I went into the office and told my doctor that, and I wish I had a picture of the look on his face. So, this is a long-standing thing with Christian nationalists denying science, denying medicine, denying medical findings in favor of all of these quack, ridiculous theories and ideas that somebody like Dr. Oz or Casey Means can make money off of.
Right. And this for me is always kind of been it's an unholy marriage, if you will. We're going to talk about marriage in a little bit too, by the way, but between the grift side of all of this and the true belief side of all of this. And I feel like there is this intersection, right? Where, somebody like Dr. Means, is able to make wild amounts of money, selling all of this stuff and saying things like, even in her testimony, when asked about any medications, she says, well, it's not for me to promote or decide or think about what medications anyone should use. It's really up to a woman or a person and their doctor.
But
that's coded language, right?
She's totally attacking established FDA approved medications that have gone through rigorous studies in favor of magic mushrooms because she had a trip on them in 2021 and felt good about them. Right. and things like that. And those aren't regulated. by the government. And that's a big part of why this movement likes this stuff so much, because there's no regulation. It's a free-for-all. If you can just convince somebody and be a good salesperson selling your snake oil, which is exactly what this is. It's, a reinvention of the snake oil salesman that we had in the 1800s.
Right.
So, that's who we're vetting to be our Surgeon General.
I mean, I wrote about last week. Was it last week? Yeah, it was soon. Time is a weird thing these days, Andra. But I wrote about RFK Jr.'s big push to promote stem cell therapy, which is also unregulated.
Has killed people, but
and
whatever.
It has killed people and tremendously maimed people. It's caused blindness. It's caused amputations. It's caused all kinds of things. And in his mind, and it sounds like in her mind as well, your blindness is actually positive because you had the option of being blinded by the medication or the treatment that you really wanted. In other words, it is like the sort of most absurd extension of this medical freedom movement, right? It is like, okay, there's science over here. These are double-blind studies. They have been extensively researched. This medication works. Here's the side effects. Here's all this. Or I'm going to pump you full of stem cells into your eyeball and we'll just see what happens. You probably want the freedom to try that, right?
No, I don't actually. But, they want you to have the freedom to try it. In fact, every time she said in that hearing yesterday, and we're recording this on Thursday for Sunday, so I'm talking about Wednesday. Every time she said that in that hearing yesterday, we need to be really careful and talk to our doctors about the things we're putting in our body. She's talking about prescription medications that have been rigorously studied and approved. She is not talking about her therapies. She is not talking about Dr. Oz's therapies. She is not talking about magic mushrooms. She is not talking about any of those things that any of these grifters in her orbit are making money off of. She is talking about taking away tried and true medications that help people feel better and help people live longer, period. And that's what you need to remember every time she opens her mouth and says that.
So there's this, wellness to fascism pipeline. This is kind of where, what we're headed for. How is this? Just go a little bit more into this. How do they? Where exactly do they converge? And I'm thinking about this idea that we talk about this every week. Who is the decider, right? Who actually gets the authority over us? Is it us or is it actually them? And she's saying, actually, the authority should be with the person, with the individual. But that's what she's saying. That's not exactly what she's meaning. It's bullshit.
No, on the New Right Tech Bro side of this, we have multiple documented places an incredible fascination with immortality.
Right.
Peter Thiel gets his blood replaced by the blood of younger people. We have the billionaire that spent billions of dollars, having his blood and cells and all of this stuff replaced and doing all kinds of things to himself to try to hack death.
Right.
So, my feeling about this, and it's just my feeling, is this is an opportunity for them to have as guinea pigs for their search for immortality. And if a bunch of us die, they don't care as long as they achieve their immortality. So opening up the marketplace to be able to experiment on people in real time and see what some of these ridiculous therapies do to people is part of that. It's a eugenics thing. And,
Go deeper into that. What do you mean by that? Because that's really compelling to me.
Well, Christian nationalists are very survival of the fittest.
Yes.
And so are the tech bros. They have that in common. So that's
And MAHA.
one place, and MAHA, that's one place where they all intersect. And, on the Christian nationalist side, they'll say that God is in control, and if something happens, God meant for that to happen, and we shouldn't be doing things to ourselves or putting things in ourselves that aren't in the Bible, because God gave us everything we needed to know in the Bible. So, and then you have the MAHA people who are very much, we need to do natural therapies and things that are, not man-made, synthetic, chemical-based, even though a lot of our prescription medications came from Native American
of course,
cultures and those kinds of things. So they evolved, and capitalists patented them and maybe improved them. I don't know. But, they did evolve from that. So you have that in the MAHA movement. And in the tech bro movement, you have this obsession with living forever and not dying. And you have a population of millions of people to experiment on with all of these things. And if they're the only ones who are alive at the end of that, they don't care. So, that's where the intersection is. And that's what eugenics is about. I mean, I was reading an article last night about gene surgeries and people in California who are working to try to alter genes to create they say we can solve all these health problems, but really it's to create a master race.
Oh my God. Well, so I want to kind of transition this into there's tradwife movement, and that also seems like a stepping stone in the conversation we're having, right? This the woman at home, no birth control, it's bad for your body, it's bad for your children, you're putting it in the environment, how can you raise your family?
Your husband's drinking the water and becoming more feminized every time he drinks water. Yeah.
I know. Nothing makes me feel more like a woman than being hydrated.
Yeah.
So in any case, the mother, the father, they are the arbiters of all medical information as they understand it from the internet and so on and so forth. And they not only want to ban or make it very difficult to have contraception. Let's be honest. They want to ban contraception. Right?
They want to ban all contraception, exactly.
And whether it's because they think that it's feminizing men, or there's too much, I don't know, estrogen in the water supply, or because they're afraid that you're not having enough babies, and that's not God's plan, that's a common link. And we get back now to the coercion, this thing. And that's, I think, the biggest thing here. It's not just that they believe those things. Fine. If you don't want to take birth control,
then don't.
More power to you.
Right.
They don't want you to take birth control. And this is where all of our conversations end up coming back, right? Almost every time. We're like, oh, they're doing this, and they want you to do that too.
And they will force you to.
And they will force you to. So this is where I want to transition to divorce. Because you've written this week about no-fault divorce and their attack on divorce, and you're always the translator for this. So translate, what's happening here?
Republicans in multiple red states have been attacking no-fault divorce for a while now.
So tell me what that means, no-fault divorce.
Well, no-fault divorce means you don't have to have a reason like infidelity, adultery, or abuse, or abandonment to get a divorce. You can just go and say, we just don't get along anymore, and get a divorce due to irreconcilable differences. That is a no-fault divorce. And what I want people to understand after they listen to this program is Christian nationalist believe that all divorce is no-fault divorce. The no-fault divorce thing is a smokescreen for outlawing all divorce.
Right.
And I put in my newsletter today, Thursday, all the different, there are multiple things if you go look online where Christian nationalist churches force their congregations to sign contracts of conduct and agree to submit to certain rules. And you can find multiple churches of those online where women have been coerced to stay with husbands who rape them repeatedly, who abuse their children, sexually abuse their children, abused them physically or emotionally. Because in these kinds of environments, the women are hauled before some tribunal and told, your husband has apologized to you. He has cried. He has said he won't do it again. And it is your job to forgive him. And, to be in God's will and to be part of this congregation, you have to forgive him. They don't believe Doug Wilson, Pete Hegseth's big yucky mentor, preaches that rape can't happen in marriage because it is a woman's responsibility to give her husband sex whenever he demands it. So you are taking away the right to say your husband raped you.
Right.
As a means of getting a divorce. Infidelity happens because you're not being the right kind of godly wife and you're not giving him what he wants. So he's looking elsewhere. Abuse happens for the same reason. So no fault divorce is all divorce.
Right.
And that is what they mean. And, read my newsletter today and look at all the things that I outlined in it about how they square that and how they thread that needle, because that is what they mean to do to everyone. They want to trap people in marriages and make it impossible for them to get out of them.
And look, this, I'll say the caveat is this is bad for men as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But the real pressure and the real pain always comes back to women. And this is a connector between birth control, right? It's a connector between no fault divorce or divorce. It is always attacks, a very steep emotional and physical tax on women.
And, keeping women out of the workforce, keeping women from being educated. We've talked about that. So, and in this part of the document, they also say we need to revise alimony laws such that the non-breadwinner, the non-contributor can't be entitled to all this money for leaving a marriage. And in many, the majority of cases, that's going to be a woman.
Right.
So,
I wonder, there's something else I want to talk to you about in a second about environmentalism and activists, but because you said something in your newsletter that was really remarkable. But I just want to say, I feel like if all of this continues apace and they get their way, isn't this going to make getting married just less attractive to everyone?
Not if they force you to.
Right.
They truly believe they can force you to get married. That's where this is headed. It's your job to get married when you're 18. It's your duty. And if you don't do that, then we're going to find some horrible incel boy and marry you to him.
Ugh.
And so, that's where this will go if they can't, legally make it such that they're putting everybody into a funnel.
So, the medication stuff, the MAHA, the divorce, all comes back to babies.
Mm-hmm.
All comes back to having babies. And almost so much of what we talk about is about babies, about the
white babies.
Oh, yes. I mean, that should go without saying. Anytime Andra and I are talking about how they want babies, you should just
It's lily
assume
white babies.
we're talking about white babies.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about different excuses or different reasons. They're theories. They're real thinkers, these white Christian nationalists. They posit a lot of theories. Women working is a reason there's no more babies. Freedom, there's too much freedom. That's a reason that women
too many choices, too many
choices. Yeah, too many choices. I think at some point we said the joy of sex was perhaps a reason. Maybe I'm mistaking that, but I'm sure they would come up with that. But in your newsletter this week, you said that people aren't having babies because of not environmental or climate change, but climate change activists.
Yes, who've convinced the younger generation that the earth is being destroyed because of climate change, which are just a bunch of hysterical freaks who are making that up. Right. And I didn't devote a lot of time to that because the Heritage Foundation took $238 million from fossil fuel connected foundations and companies between 2020 and 2022. And they published Mandate for Leadership Project 2025 in April of 2023. So $238 million of fossil fuel money funded the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025 and Saving America by Saving the Family. So I don't give a crap what they want to say in that section about the environment or climate change. They are paid hacks to sell a fossil fuel narrative and an extractive narrative to the rest of the country. So, young people are completely right to look at what's happening and say, do I want to bring another life into this kind of planet? I'm not sure that I do. I mean, I wasn't sure that I did. And so I didn't. It's not unreasonable for young people to feel that way.
No. And look, I think, blaming climate activists is so stupid, but it's like saying, well, I wouldn't have asthma if my doctor hadn't told me I have asthma. That stupid doctor gave me asthma, right?
Right.
It's the dumbest thing. But there's, I think, a bigger point that ties all of this together, in kind of, at least, is the idea that influencers have an incredible amount of power, and white Christian nationalists, oil concerns, all kinds of conservative movements are glomming on to influencers, right? And it's why we have so many. I could play, like, we could not talk every week and just play clips, because they are pumping out so many podcasts. What's his name? Joel Whedon?
Webben.
Ugh. I intentionally try to forget. That dude is always coming out like, women are terrible. I hate them, and so on and so forth.
I'm waiting for him to say women belong in gulags like Nick Fuentes did. But
well, he believes it for sure.
Yeah, he sure does.
So this is a thing that I think all of us here need to really understand, is that the influencer class has been really, really co-opted to a large degree. And it's why during the election, Democrats were like, oh, the left needs its own, what's his name? Big podcaster. The left needs our own influencers. The ship has sailed. And so, the connection between white Christian nationalism, fossil fuel industries, anti-birth control, MAHA, is the influencer.
Yeah.
And that's who we want to make our Surgeon General.
And that's part of what we all need to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, what is it about American values? What is it about what we individually and collectively value that got us to the place where we have snake oil salesmen in the top healthcare spots in our government? Is it our need have only follow people who have a lot of followers because they must know what they're talking about? Is it our attraction to celebrities and people who have big names? Is it our need to constantly be entertained? Is it our need to just only hear things we want to hear and that validate our own beliefs? You know, because those are individual and collective values as Americans that have gotten us here. And that, you know, I mean, you can call you and me influencers too. We're sitting here talking on the internet, but
Sure.
I do not sit and tell anybody what they want to hear. I would rather go off and live my life and do other things than sit here and show up and talk about some of the things that I feel like need to be talked about every week.
Right.
So, you know, I'm not showing up going, how did this play and how do I need to spin it so that more people will, I don't care about that. And I don't take sponsorship money. I don't let anybody pay me to say anything. So, you know, we have to look as individual Americans at how we're valuing things that perpetuate that and stop that.
Yeah. That's a good place to sort of stop. And I think, you know, on that note, everyone, if you haven't subscribed to For Such a Time as This, you really ought to. And you know, you can subscribe for free to Lincoln Square and For Such a Time as This as well, to support the work. It is, you know, we all do this because we believe that this message needs to be told.
Mm-hmm.
And when it all comes down in 50 years and our grandkids are like, what did you do when this thing happened? Then we can say, well, we didn't shut up.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't shut up about it. And that's why I value our audience as well.
Yeah.
Andra, thanks. This is always, it's like I love it. It's towards the end of the week, you know, just get to come and dunk on white Christian nationalists. And also the connections that we make are bonkers to me.
But then I log on and you're like, Andra, you were right about this thing.
Yeah.
You were right again.
And somebody's, you know, I'm the worst person at a party because I know you, because somebody's like, hey, what is, you know, they want to do away with no fault divorce. And I'm like, well, actually, and then they're like, oh no, why did I say anything?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I appreciate that.
I'm that person too.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Well, everyone, like and subscribe so that we can become very powerful influencers and someday become surgeon generals. God help us all.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andra. We'll see you next
Thanks,
week.